Now that we've used this program to generate output and we have it captured, we want to make some slight changes to this code and keep most of it around so we don't have to retype it. So right now we have lab1.cpp up here, we got lab1.cpp here. So we want to make another version of this and say File, save lab1.cpp as, and we're going to change the name here to be, at the end here, 1A. Now make a slightly different version. Now if we say save, notice up here it says lab1a.cpp, but here it's still using the old one. So what we're going to have to do is right mouse click, we're going to say remove, and we're not going to delete, we're just going to remove it. And if we say right mouse click and say add, and over here say existing item, we'll see over here that we have C source lab1, the original, but now we have lab1a as well. So we're going to double click on that, double click here, and so what we have now is these now are synchronized up, and now we can start making changes. We still have lab1, but now we can make changes to this without having to retype everything. So I'm just going to get rid of these printf statements. I'm going to get rid of the output at the end, and I'm going to add in some new things to look at. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put in a printf, and we're going to put in some numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. And we're going to print that out. Now I think you can figure out what that output's going to look like. And don't forget, we better put a \n at the end. So we'll terminate that with a semicolon. Now what we're going to do is something a little different. We're going to type in printf, and normally you put double quotes here, which we've done, but what we're going to do is we're going to put over here some actual characters. Now this is a string, these are all characters, and these characters are strung together, and that's why it's called a string of characters. But we're going to separate it out here. For instance, we're going to put, after the comma, after the double quotes, we're going to put quote, single quote, capital H, and then we're going to put a comma. We're going to put a single quote, small I, comma, and then we're going to put an exclamation, single quote, exclamation mark, single quote, comma, and then at the end we're going to put single quote \n for enter key, and at the end here we're going to put a semicolon. And what we've done here is we've got, these are individual characters, HI exclamation mark. And what we can do here is put in something called substitution parameters. For instance, %C says whatever's after the double quotes here, the first thing I'm going to do, I was going to substitute in here as a character. Now we can also put %C again because we need the I, we need a %C for the exclamation mark, and we need a %C for the \n. Now let's run that up and see what happens. And what we're going to see here is we're using this as a marker. So we can see here that each character is substituted one for each space that's here. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to change this a little bit and see what happens next. Now to save ourselves a little bit of work, what we're going to do is we're going to basically go down here. We're going to copy, Control C these two lines. And then down here we're going to do Control V. And we're using the same marker as we did before so we can see these characters, but this time I'm going to put %4C here, %4C here, and %4C here, and see how that changes our output. We're substituting the H into this %C, but the %C is now %4C. What this means is the H is going to be printed in a field of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now character is only one position, so when we take a look at the next %4C, it's going to print the I here with 1, 2, 3, fourth position, 1, 2, 3, fourth position. And what it's doing is it's putting spaces in front of each one of these and space filling this. So I'm just going to copy these again, Control C, then I'm going to paste them here, and instead of just %4C, I'm going to put a %04C, 04C, 04C. Now let's run it up one more time. In the field of 4, instead of putting spaces, is putting zeros because I got a 04 here. So the field size is 4. I'm doing a character in a field of 4, which means that the character goes in one position and there's something that's going to be at the start. Either spaces, if I just say %4, if I %04, it's going to 0 fill it in the front. Now let's copy these two printf statements again. Control C, and we're going to paste them in here, and we're going to make a slight change. We're going to take out each of these 04s, so we just have %C's left. And what we're going to do is in front of each %C we're going to put a \t. Now \t is our tab. Instead of a field of 4 as we've done before, if we run this up we'll see that everything's done now in a field of 8 because \tab does fields of 8. So if we take a look here, we have a field of 8, then the H, another field of 8, then the I, and another field of 8, then the exclamation mark. What we're going to do is we're going to right mouse click, we're going to say edit, we're going to say mark, we're going to select all of this information that's here, we're going to go back to the tab, right mouse click, we're going to say edit, copy. Then what we're going to do is go here after our program, put a /*, and Control V our output in and save our program. Now as before, what we're going to do is we're going to say File, save lab1a.cpp as, and we're going to make a new version because we want to try one last thing. We're going to change this 1a to 1b, and we're going to say save. And as before, you can see this is lab1b, but this is still lab1a. So we're going to say right mouse click, and we're going to remove but not delete. We're just going to remove this one. And then we're going to say File, Add, Existing Item, and the existing item here will be Lab1b. So now we have a copy of Lab1b that we can now work with and make some other changes. So we have other versions. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of all of these prints here. We're going to get rid of all of our output, and we're going to start again. This time with numbers instead of characters. So for instance, if we wanted to print a number, if we said print f, quote, and then we wanted to put in numbers such as 5, 6, and maybe do a calculation like 5 plus 6. And let's put a semicolon at the end here. Now these, we're going to use substitution parameters again, but in this case, these are not characters, these are integers. So what we're going to do is we're going to say %i for the 5, %i for the 6, and %i for the 5 plus 6. So those are our three integers that we're going to have coming out. But what we want to do is we want to do a little bit of fancier stuff. For instance, 5, we might want to put in the thing here plus. And then between these we might want to put in an equals, and then let's see what this output looks like. So let's run this up. Well, first of all, let's kill the old output. Let's run this up, and what we see here is 5, which is being substituted as %i plus. Notice there's a space, then a plus, space, and plus, space plus the 6, and then a space equals, 2 spaces equals, and 11. So this is how we can format up integer values. Now before we continue on, let's put in a \n here so that our output goes to the next line. Then let's copy this and let's do something a little different. Let's Control C and let's Control V, and instead of doing an addition, let's do a division. Now this is the actual division here, 5 divided by 6, and here to make it look like a division we're just going to change the symbol to a /, which is our divide sign. So let's run it up and see what happens this time. And what we can see here is this doesn't seem to make a lot of sense because 5 divided by 6 is definitely not 0. But what you're going to find when you're working with integers, if you divide an integer by an integer, it's going to basically get to the nearest integer, and in this case it's going to go to 0 because it can't have a fractional part. So for things that have fractional parts, these are called floating point numbers. So what we're going to do is we're going to again copy this, Control C, Control V, and we're going to, instead of using this, we're going to use %f for floating point. Floating point are numbers that actually have decimal parts to them. So because they have decimal parts, let's make this 5.0, 6.0, and 5.0 divided by 6.0. Now let's see what happens when we run this one up. So when we run this one up, we get our expected result. 5 over 6 is actually 0.8333. And that's the difference between floating point and integers. If you divide integers, you get an integer. If you divide floating point numbers, you actually get a floating point number which has a decimal point. Now to finish this off, what we're going to do is something very simple. We're just going to grab these three lines. We're going to Control C, and we're going to Control V here, and we're going to change this around a little bit. We're going to do %4i plus %4i equals %4i. In this case here again, we're going to do %4i, %4i, and %4i to have a field of 4. In this case, we're going to do %4, but because it's decimal, we can specify how many decimal places by saying 0.2 decimal places. So this will be field of 4 with 2 decimal places, and again field of 4 and 2 decimal places. So let's see how our final output looks. And if we look at our output this time, we can see that these things here line up, our pluses and slashes line up, and our equals line up here because we're using everything in a field of 4. And as before, what we're going to do is right mouse click, edit, mark, grab this information, go back up to here, right mouse click, edit, copy, click up here, /*, and Control V or output in. And once we've done that, we're going to say File, Save All, and we're basically completed this portion of the lab.